15th, 2020. Welcome back. I'm joined today by my co-host, Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico, and
Hi.
Carlos Ponce, just outside of Mexico City. Hi, guys. Welcome back.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're talking with Jeff Allen of Well Learning Library. Before we get into the topic of today, we'd like to get to know you, Jeff. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's great to be on. So I'm Jeff, as you guys mentioned, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called the Well Learning Library. And the Well Learning Library is an online training health and wellness platform that has a number of clients in various spaces. And we provide health and wellness education to the employees of those companies. And we also have a unique focus on how our building spaces impact our health and well-being.
Excellent. And how long have you been doing this, Jeff? Just curious what led you into this direction.
Sure. So I'm a former product manager in the technology space. I formerly worked for a travel technology company. And when I left that last company, actually at the tail end of before leaving that company, they asked me to go and create an online training program for them. I had a deep knowledge and domain knowledge of the entire product. And so they went and asked me to do that. So I built a team around creating the training program. And through that, we hired instructional designers and training managers, where I got to really learn the learning and development industry, how instructional design works, how content creation works. And from that, I saw an opportunity to go create my own company around creating e-learning content or online training for other companies. So I created a company called Chromatic Content. From there was when I met someone who is an expert in the well building standard, which we can talk about in a little bit more detail. But she brought to me an opportunity around building health and wellness training. So she saw within the well building standard how they were coming out with another version of this standard. It's a certification process for building spaces to make building spaces healthy for the people that occupy those building spaces. And so she was in need of someone to build a training program. And one thing led to another. It started off as a collection of 10 training courses, and then it just became bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where it became essentially its own corporate wellness educational platform.
Great. Well, speaking of good buildings or well-built buildings, let's talk about the topic today. Kim, please introduce the show. I'm looking forward to talking and digging in.
Sure, thank you. I think Jeff already did a pretty good job. Thank you, Jeff, and welcome. So today's topic is healthy people, healthy buildings, and a healthy environment. Discover how building spaces can advance human health and well-being while simultaneously contributing to a more sustainable world. Perfect. I think that this conversation is actually very timely considering the current climate of the world, COVID, of course. So I guess I would like to approach this, I think, from a couple spaces. Like, what can companies be doing right now with the COVID situation to guarantee a healthy environment for their employees? For those of us who happen to have the benefit of working from home, how could we do that same thing at home and create an environment that's comfortable for us, not only healthy, but also, I think, our emotional, mental health, if that's something that your company also trains on?
Sure. Yeah. So we do have a variety of health and wellness topics: nutrition, hydration, ergonomics, mental health, substance use and addiction training. Wow. But to your question, I think that there's kind of two parts to that. The first is, what can companies be doing? I think right now, it depends on where you are in the world. But let's just presume that you're in a location where we're really not ready to go back to the built environment. It's not yet safe unless we, and the governments and public health officials are saying still stay home unless it's really essential. Then I think what companies can be doing is supporting their workforce to work remotely. So giving them whatever resources people need to be their best and be as productive as they possibly can, to take care of their health and well-being, so that they can be, the most productive that they can be. So that's kind of the short term. Looking medium term to long term, as we re-enter our building spaces, that we are going to be going back to our building spaces at some point. It's kind of two things I think companies can be doing. One is, first of all, how can they make these building spaces safe for people? How can we mitigate the risk of COVID-19 as we go back? Because there's going to be this transition period where the virus is still around and we're not sure, where it is. There's a lot of uncertainty in that, and that creates a lot of anxiety within people. So it's important to make your employees feel safe, and in order to do that, you have to make your building space as safe as possible, mitigate the risk as much as possible. So that's things like, cleaning protocols, education around what people can be doing to mitigate the risk, both operational people, building operations people, as well as just, every employee, what can they be doing? In addition to that, there are things that can be put in place like monitoring. There's a lot of technology out there today that where sensors can be put in to actually detect whether or not there is a virus in the air, whether or on surfaces. So monitoring surfaces as well as air quality is an important thing. That real-time monitoring can then be feedback. So it's really a holistic approach of a lot of different strategies that can be put in place.
Well, that's interesting. So I've heard many times, where you live and where you work can make a big difference in how you feel. So besides the obvious in terms of sanitizing, creating a safe environment as people begin to get back to work, critically important, right? You don't want people stressing, am I going to get sick just because I'm showing up to the office? What are other things or trends are you seeing that work well to, one, increase the sense of belonging inside the organization, and two, perhaps even improve the sense of well-being and dare say even being more productive because of the space or the environment that you're in? What's the typical trend you're seeing that works in that direction?
Well, I think for right now, this is one of the reasons why we've built the Well Learning Library, is not just to provide employees with health and wellness training, but how do we keep employees connected while they're not in the building space? So, I think that when we go back and re-enter buildings, many companies are going to go to some sort of hybrid model where there's more flexible work from home or work remote, as well as providing that opportunity to for people to actually be in the building space. Because working remotely, it has its advantages and its disadvantages. People get more time back because there's no commute, so that's an advantage. You could argue, some people are saying I'm more productive when I work from home because I don't have all the distractions within the office space. At the same time, there is, being in a space with one another, you have that human connection, which is huge for mental health, as well as for being able to connect with employees around projects and things like that. So there's pros and cons, but we wanted to create a platform where people can interact remotely, but then they also have, but then we're also training them on what's important to connect as human beings.
Jeff, I have a quick question. I'm sorry, Tulio, just really quick. You mentioned two things that were jumped at me, and they're key from my standpoint. You mentioned holistic, and then you also mentioned mental health. So to me, that's a very good point, because holistic also encompasses the mental health part. Mm-hmm. So what is the Well Learning Library offer or doing to help with mental health challenges that are COVID driven or caused by the global pandemic?
Yeah, so we're building a variety of mental health. Mental health is a very broad subject, right? So, I mean, one aspect of mental health is substance use and substance addiction. So, we are building training around that to build awareness for people of what that is. There's we've seen a huge surge actually in substance use and addiction with COVID-19. Now, why is that occurring? I don't totally know the answer to that, but I would assert that a big part of it is anxiety. So how can people deal with their anxiety and get to the source of that and mitigate that anxiety is a big part. So, we're also building. One of our visions is to build coaching programs too. Coaching programs as well as having therapists on demand is something that we're looking at doing to provide additional support for people who are dealing with that level of anxiety that COVID-19 is having the impact of.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, we could say the primary, let's call them stressors right now. You have people who are, one, afraid of getting this dreaded disease. Then you've got, on top of that, people afraid of what's going to happen to their livelihood, whether they are going to lose their livelihood or have already lost it. So they're trying to figure out how to make that work. Then you've got parents with children at home, multiple children at home, doing school from home with sometimes limited space. In big cities, not everybody's got a house and a lot of space. So that's a lot to take on all at once, right? And let's not forget the other things that people were already dealing with, whatever that was, whatever other health issues or family dynamics issues, whatever those things were, that didn't go away because of COVID-19, right? Sometimes they got exasperated. So what are some key things that people ought to be doing to, dare I say, pace themselves through this major change and shift? Any advice that people can take to heart? Because every single one of us is facing, one way or another, some kind of an additional stress and anxiety. Every single one of us. We're all in this. So what are some of the perhaps tips to just kind of pause and say, okay, these are the critical things you should do to get yourself a little bit more level-headed through all this? What would those be?
Yeah, there's so many different factors, as you mentioned, that ultimately it comes down to uncertainty, which is, the uncertainty of financial well-being, uncertainty of physical well-being with, of potentially getting COVID or getting it and then giving it to, to someone that you love who is maybe more at risk of this virus really having an impact on them. But to answer your question, I think that the key is to how do you stay in the present moment? How do you be present and essentially block out all of those things that are just unknowns? There's a lot we can't control. And so how do you let go of those things that you can't control? There's a lot of things that, you can do to do that. Meditation, breathing exercises are a good one to get yourself present and be present. Also, if you are finding yourself experiencing a lot of anxiety because of all of these unknowns and uncertainty, how can you block out some of that anxiety producing information, really? Like, sometimes shutting the news off. I'm someone who likes to really stay informed. So, I don't promote, or to ignore the news. However, sometimes, having that awareness of how is the news impacting you,
right. Or simply choosing where you're getting your news from. That too, Perhaps Facebook is probably not the best choice to control your anxiety while staying informed,
what was that?
Right? I said Facebook is probably not the best choice to control your anxiety while trying to stay informed, right? There's a lot of misinformation. high emotions, and so yeah, like choose and select a source, I guess, that is ideal for you and works for you, and moderate it, and be aware of your own mindset when you're preparing yourself to get informed.
Yeah. So shutting off social media, which is not that easy. There's a lot of research now being done around the addictiveness of social media. So it's something that I think we all need to look at as a society, as to, yes, there's a lot of advantages of social media, but in some ways it's become, it's created its disadvantages as well. In addition to what you said about the social media and misinformation, or just information that's not complete, and so it's causing all this additional uncertainty, is the back and forth that gets created on social media. When we communicate through written communication, there's so much lost. Whereas, when this is a good forum, and obviously the most ideal forum is in-person communication, but we lose so much when we can't see that other person, when we don't see the body language, we don't pick up on that there's so much communication lost, which can add to what we're talking about here.
Speaking of resources and reliable resources, what do you use at Well Learning Library to gather your information that then you're transmitting and providing to your clients?
Sure. So so I mentioned, one of the big things is the well building standard. The well building standard is an evidence-based certification process that was built upon decades of years and years and years of research by industry experts, medical experts, experts, around building spaces. So we leverage that. We work with the International Well Building Institute that administers the well building standard for some of the best practices around health and well-being, or health and wellness in the built environment. And then we also have partnered with a variety of ergonomics experts, mental health experts, nutrition experts. We just brought on a new nutritionist and plant-based chef who is providing the platform with cooking classes around how to to make delicious, nutritious, and easy to make food right there in your home, and while also learning about the nutrition behind it. So we partner with a lot of different experts in the field. You can find some of those on our website at welllearninglibrary.com.
Okay, so what I've heard is turn off those things that are triggering the negative emotions, all right? See if you can eliminate or diminish how much of that influence is triggering the stressors. But what about, your topic today is about healthy buildings and healthy environments. So, what can we do physically in our workspace or our home to create a better environment? In people who live in cities that are maybe in a crowded small apartment, are there some things that they can do to physically create a better working environment that can improve their well-being? What are some of the things that are working?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is learning what how your behaviors impact the environment. One of the things that we ground ourselves in, and we're big believers of, is the United Nations put out their Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, and the Well Building Standard is grounded in that as well. There's 17 Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations developed with all of its member states signing on to in 2005, and over 10,000 companies have committed to those Sustainable Development Goals. So, and one of those is health and well-being. But health and well-being is not, we don't see it as something independent of a healthy environment. When we pollute our environment, it impacts the air quality that we then breathe. When we When water is not clean, that impacts the water that we drink. So how we impact the environment ultimately impacts us as well. So it's learning about those various factors that impact the environment, so that then people can take action and learn about, like, oh, I didn't realize that all that plastic that I'm using just goes out and is wasteful. Oh, I didn't realize that how much meat I'm eating contributes to methane in the air, that then contributes to climate change and poor air quality, as well as rising air temperatures and water temperatures. So it's learning about these things, finding those resources. That's really what I would recommend is learning, is building that learning practice of learning about it. Because I could give you 5 answers on here, but that's not going to be a for no pun intended, a sustainable practice to continuing to learn about what you can do to make a difference.
Okay, so
yeah, actually, I'll go back to a quote that I said a couple days ago, or a couple episodes ago, and we learned about. I saw on Facebook, social media, like a meme that said something like 1 million people who are doing zero waste imperfectly have more impact than 100 people doing zero waste perfectly. So I think it's encouraging to get us to start small and focus on an immediate goal. And I think as far as work environments go, how we can little by little encourage other people to kind of get on board. For those companies who are interested in either with sustainability or just making...
Well, if I could, before you ask, I want to jump in on that. Yeah, like just to give you a personal example, right? Like, I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not vegan. Like, right? So I'm telling you about meat and how it impacts it, but I would be a hypocrite to tell you stop eating meat. Like I'm actually, in the last few months, I am grappling with that from just an ethical and personally moral perspective. I may shift that. So to your point though, it's I hear a lot of people say, oh, I can't, I'm never gonna go vegetarian. I can't go vegan. Like that's just not a it's not a habit that I can develop. But whenever I go to a restaurant, it's too hard. Well, don't do it 100%, but can you cut it back a little bit? Can you take, 1 meal out a week or a couple meals out a week where you're eating
meatless Monday, right?
Yeah, meatless Monday. There you go. Yeah.
Very good. And I think that's great. And just little by little on these baby steps, right? None of us were born walking. But what can companies do, those companies who say that's all well and great, thank you, Jeff, I want to have a safe environment for my employees, I want to become more sustainable, but I just don't have the resources to do that? Like, what's, aside from learning, are there any immediate steps that perhaps we could take into consideration?
When you say they don't have the resources, what do you mean by that?
Let's say it's not financially possible for me to go big. Like, I can't get a detector to see if there's a virus in my building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think that look, if it's we don't have the resources to invest in a major certification program like the Well Building Standard, which is it is definitely financially viable. So if you think that finances are constrained, I would encourage you or have someone at your company to talk to someone, and I'm happy to introduce you to people who can help guide you through thinking through that process and the potential return on that investment. However, if that's still not financially viable after you've done that due diligence, then it's just look at what where can you start. There are a lot of there. For example, the Well Building Standard or the International Well Building Institute put out a huge report on guidelines to recommended strategies and guidelines for reentry and to be prepared and for reentry. So that's something that's free and available. You can go download it from their website and start to look at areas that you can start to implement right there on your own.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about education is key, right? Because yes, you can hire an external company to get certified and pay a fee for that, just the same way you could learn how to do it yourself and try to, as best as possible, create an environment that closely replicates what they would have done. I mean that's just kind of do it yourself versus hiring someone who can jump right in. The do it yourself is going to take more time, it's going to take a lot more education, but I think the excuse of, well, it's too expensive, it really is just an excuse. It doesn't cost anything for people to educate themselves and to learn and to adopt even small steps that may take even a full year or two to fully implement, but every step gets you where you need to be. We're up on time. It's been a pleasure to have you. Before we do wrap up, I want to just ask you one final question, and that is, in your journey in educating people and companies about the importance of creating a healthy environment to work in, a healthy environment to thrive in, what has been one of the biggest hurdles for you in that process of helping companies through this? And how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so, well, it's an ongoing effort. I'll tell you that. I think the biggest effort is how to get people to actually take the action to take the training that you've created. And create, one of the big things for us is how do we create really, really engaging, fun, and even entertaining, even sometimes funny content. Because if you build content that people are not going to want to watch, or they load it up on their computer and then they're checking their Facebook or their text messages, it does zero good. It's just wasted training content and wasted resources to develop that. So, to overcome it is to build engaging training content. With people working from home now, there's so much content out there. People are getting webinar fatigue. They're getting Zoom fatigue, or virtual teleconference fatigue. So, so that's something that we have to consider. And, that's another practice you can put in place. Make sure you give yourself the time to get up, walk away from the computer, walk around the block, even just taking your eyes away from the computer for a minute really can help you over the long run.
Yeah, good advice on the Zoom fatigue. I gave up trying to be in front of the video all day. I prefer to walk around with the phone or a headset. I did try one of those things you hang around your neck with the iPhone in front of you, and I thought that was ridiculous, so I gave that up. But I did try. Like you said, get out there, have a walk. Don't try to constantly be in front of a screen. So it's been a pleasure to have you as our guest, and thank you for being with us today. It's been enjoyable, and hopefully those who are listening who are interested in additional ways or additional information on how to implement better, healthy work environments, to reach out, definitely visit the landing page. We will make sure we have the information they need to get access to you and to get access to your company. Carlos, what do we got coming up tomorrow? We got another show for the week.
One more. And it's going to be at 1 as all of them. And we're going to be speaking with Nerit Rubenstein, the CEO and co-founder of DojoLIVE, which is a credit scoring and improvement platform. And the topic is very intriguing, to say the least, and it's called the 3-digit number that never sleeps. I wonder what that is, okay? Or in other words, how technology can help your credit score survive the pandemic. So that's what the guest has sent us for tomorrow's topic, tomorrow's conversation. Look forward to that right here on DojoLIVE, 1 p.m. Pacific. And of course, Tulio, let's remind the audience and of course our guest, Jeff, that on Monday we're going to be at 1 p.m. We're going to be recapping the 3 shows that we had this week, including this one. So Jeff, please be on the lookout for that. If you want to, participate also, that's more than welcome.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Well,
Yeah,
thank you guys very much for having me on.
For those who don't have 20 to 30 minutes, we recap 3 shows and all the highlights in 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
So,
10 minutes.
Monday at 1. Stay safe, everyone. Until next time.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.